whatever our own excuses are, we all have them. And we're the ones limiting ourselves. And that, I think, is my bigger message, is that stop it, these stories, because they're not true. They're not true.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Rocking Midlife Podcast. And I have a fabulous lady joining me today, Debbie Weiss, all the way from the US of A. So welcome, Debbie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
I'm thrilled that you're here. And seriously, folks, when you hear some of Debbie's backstory that we've just been talking about, you are just going to be so blown away by this beautiful lady and the story that she has and the encouragement that she has for you. So just a little bit about her. Debbie has over 50 years of experience in dealing with some of life's toughest challenges. And she is an expert in chasing your own dreams in spite of your circumstances. So Debbie's a certified trainer in success principles. She's an entrepreneur. She's a podcast host. So we'll be making sure that we have links to all of these things so you can go tune into her podcast. She's a speaker, caregiver, a mother, a best-selling author, and she has a new book coming out, which sounds fabulous, called The Sprinkle Effect, a guide to living a more colorful and fulfilling life. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking a bit about today, how to live a vibrant and colorful life at midlife, regardless of what life throws at you. You still have that ability. So Debbie, thank you again for being with us. And as I say to all my guests, please tell us about yourself and how did you end up in this place talking to midlifers and writing these wonderful books?
Still blows me away that I am in this place talking to you about this. Never would have expected it.
Yeah.
My story, I guess, begins when I was 17 and my father had a massive stroke right before he turned 46. Talk about midlife. Luckily, he survived, but he was permanently disabled and my parents soon divorced and I was his caregiver for the next 30 years. So in my early 20s, I was learning to navigate things that most 20-year-olds do not have to, something typically in our 40s or 50s that we first learn about. And then when my oldest son turned 2, he was diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And then, for everyone who's a parent, we all know that parents are caregivers.
Yes.
But when you have a child with special needs, and I have one with and one without, so I see the comparison, and honestly, there's no comparison. It really just takes on a whole new level of caring and caregiving and learning about things that you never would have expected to. And I think that happens whenever you're a caregiver, right? You're always learning about the illness that your loved one has or whatever it is. But when it's your own child, there's nothing to compare.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my caregiving journey continued when my husband, who suffered from a variety of different illnesses for quite some time, he became permanently disabled from a variety of both mental and physical illnesses. And just when it seemed like we had his depression at an anxiety at a good place, he had just come out of a hospitalization for mental illness. 5 weeks later, he cruelly got diagnosed with terminal blood cancer out of the blue.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It was a kind of a nasty twist of fate, of timing.
Yeah.
And so he survived for 6 months from the time of his diagnosis. And I was home kind of taking a leave of absence from my job and with him full time.
Was your father still alive while you were caring for your son and then your husband?
So not for my husband, but my father was alive until my son, maybe my dad passed away when my son was about 10 or 11.
Right. So you were caring for both at that point, and then you've got a husband with depression and things like that. Goodness me. So it's been a life of serving other people hugely. And what happened to you in the midst of all of this?
Well, I didn't realize until I turned 50, which for some reason, for each of us, we each have either a moment in time or there's usually some kind of pivotal point in our
Mm,
lives. For me,
yeah.
it was at number 50. It just felt like, wow, chances are I have more life behind me than I do ahead of me. And I realized that I hadn't lived my life for myself. And
Hmm.
not that I ever would not take care of my loved ones, because that's not the case, but I did it while losing myself
Mm.
and not caring for myself, thinking that that would be selfish, that, you know, I should just put everybody else's needs before mine. And what I realized is that I was doing all of us a disservice because I was walking around always on eggshells, always ready to erupt. I was exhausted. I was constantly overwhelmed, stressed, angry, resentful. And that's no way to live. And then I wasn't showing up for my loved ones in the way that I wanted it to. So, it was no good for any of us. And I had that realization around 50, and that's when I realized I had to make a change.
That's so much. There's just so much. I know that that's something that caregivers really struggle with because they're constantly worrying about everybody else. A lot of them will neglect their own well-being and their own dreams and anything. And I guess there's a choice in that, isn't there? You either decide to take back that for yourself, own your dreams or whatever, or you, like you said, you can become quite resentful and withdrawn. So you chose to step back into what it is that you want to do, what you've been dreaming of. Was that hard though? Was that a hard shift? I mean, it's one thing to recognize it, but was it a hard shift to actually make?
So I didn't, here's the funny thing. I didn't have, this sounds so silly. I didn't have any dreams.
That doesn't sound
There was
silly.
nothing in particular that I thought I always wanted to do this.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. I didn't know. It really was more of just prioritizing what I needed.
Yeah.
And it was hard. What I found was, for me, I was never good at setting boundaries and saying no. And not just saying no to my loved ones. I wouldn't say no to anyone who asked me for anything, to do anything. If somebody needed me to volunteer for an organization, oh, of course. And everyone would say, Are you crazy? Like, you can't take any more on. Oh, it's not that much. They really need me. What would they do? At one point, I was treasurer of 3 organizations
Oh, that's
while
crazy.
I was still caregiving, and I have my own insurance agency. So that was a lot and is a lot.
Oh my
And
goodness.
what was I thinking? Like,
Yeah.
I
What were
wasn't
you thinking?
oh,
Oh my
was.
gosh. Yeah.
I remember my friend actually saying to me, You can say no. You have a problem with saying no.
A lot of women
And I
do
was,
though, don't we? We
yes.
do.
And I didn't realize that. It was like I didn't want to let anyone down. And if I'm being honest, it feels good to feel needed, right? Find anyone else. I'm gonna be their savior and come to the rescue. I think all of that played into it as well. And also, we all think that we should be superwoman, that I should be able to do all of these things and help everyone. And, I was only hurting myself. And when I learned that it's okay to say no, and and it was very hard for me to resign from a few of my volunteer positions, to take a step back, to realize I didn't have to say yes to every social invitation that came my way. I mean, how many times did I think it was a good idea? Sure, yeah, I'll do that. And then that day you're sitting there, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this. And you're thinking, I can't believe I said yes. I can't believe I have to go to this, right? And look, sometimes you get there and it's all good, but oftentimes it's not. And I don't remember the exact phrase, but every time that you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. I was saying no to things that I needed, which could have been rest, time
Yeah.
alone, whatever it was. I was choosing that over kind of my own needs. And so that was eye-opening to me.
It's like a constant feeling obligated, isn't it? I feel obligated. I must be here. I must be there. And like you said, you're saying no to the things that you really would like to be doing. And of course, there's a balance in that. I mean, there are things that we need to go to that we're not always going to be thrilled about, but particularly in a case like yours, where your whole life already is so much serving other people, to then add even more layers of that on top. Your friends must have been just pulling their hair out watching you.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, this one friend, I think she just couldn't take it anymore. And one day she was, what's wrong with you?
Good. They staged an intervention, did they? So with where you're at now, writing these books and encouraging women, so you've made this shift for yourself when you hit 50, you've realized, oh my gosh, I actually have an issue here. You've started to make a shift yourself in what you do with your time and your energy. How did your books come out of that? How did working with other midlife women come out of this?
You know, it's really come out of this journey since that time because now I'm 61, so I'm a decade into this journey.
You look
And like I
fabulous,
said-
by the way. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. And like I said before, I never had any desire to do anything in particular. And
Yeah.
I have a college degree in accounting. No accountant ever dreams of writing a book. Accountants like numbers. We don't
Yeah.
like words. And so it's just what I find so interesting. Even now, I still can't believe it because when I started it, kind of opening my mind to possibilities that I had always been closed off to, that's when my life started to change. And my my memoir is called On Second Thought, maybe I can. And the reason that that's the title is because my whole life, I'm a scaredy cat and I still am. And it doesn't mean, yes, I'm afraid of the dark. Okay, I still am. I go to sleep with my TV on. I have to be honest. And, all of those kind of things, but also just trying anything new from a new food to a new hobby. Like, I'm not talking big, crazy stuff.
Mhm.
And so if you ask me, oh, do you want to try this? No, right away, I'm saying no. But what I've learned is even if that's my knee jerk reaction, if I just take a breath and wait a minute and think about it and be like, well, wait a second, maybe I can do that. Why not? Why am I saying no? Let me give it a try. And I never did that. I always just said no.
Yeah.
And protection mechanism, right?
It is. It
I
is.
didn't want to fail. I didn't want to look stupid. I had convinced myself, like I just told you, oh, accountants don't write. I'm not creative, all the things. And so over the last 10 years, I've seen that when I took a chance, sometimes it didn't work, but more often than not, it did. And I've discovered something about myself I had no idea existed. And I mean, no idea. And when I learned this, I felt like I had to let everyone know that there's another way. There's another way than how I've been living and how many people have been living. And I wanted to share that. And when it came down to it, through all these discussions with people, and it was like, well, you've had a lot of stuff in your life. You should write a book. Ha ha ha, right? Everyone's just, you should write a book.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right.
But you did it. You did it.
But I never took it seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then one day I was listening to a podcast and the woman was interviewing a woman who helped first-time authors get their stories out there.
Oh,
And
perfect.
this woman, I'm listening to this for a reason. This is divine intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked her and I contacted her, and she was launching a course, a 12-week course for first-time authors. And I was very scared because I was afraid that I couldn't do it, or I was just afraid. And then as I was considering it, my husband got the diagnosis,
Mm.
and I was seeing a therapist at the time. And I said to the therapist, I am almost embarrassed that I'm even bringing this up at a time like this. And I tell her about the class. And I said, obviously, I'm not going to do this now, now that Gary, my husband, was just diagnosed.
Mm.
And she said, I completely disagree.
Wow.
She said, I think this is the perfect time. And I said, well, what if I can't show up 1 week? What if there's homework and I can't do it? And she said, who cares? You need something
Yes.
outside of everything that's going on, something separate just for you to concentrate on.
Wise lady.
And
She was right, wasn't she?
she was so right. It
Yeah.
took me a while to get into it. But once I did, I realized that even though it was super hard, did not come easily, all the things, but it's still, I would schedule in times to write every day, whether I got up early and wrote at 5:30 in the morning, or I brought my computer to the hospital with me, whatever it was. And when he passed away, I was 3 chapters shy of completing my memoir.
Wow. Wow.
So you just never know. We don't know what we're capable of unless we try.
And then publishing that book, it must have snowballed because you've now got your podcast, you're a speaker. For those who haven't yet gone over and had a look at Debbie's page, Debbie actually sent me a clip of you being interviewed on the Kelly Clarkson Show. So you've gone from being this caregiver to someone who's out there on, well, national TV. How did all this happen? Just from writing your book and being brave and starting to say yes to the right things, not yes to all the obligations, but yes to the right things. It's incredible.
It is. It is. It just, everything about it blows me away. Blows me away. It just goes to show, look, the Kelly Clarkson thing was amazing. It was, it was a lot of things coming together, but I only had 48 hours notice before I was on.
Oh, you're
So the
kidding.
first thing, what did I have to ask my friend to do my hair? I mean, but let's get down to it. That was the most important part, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, but it's still now, even when I reflect back, I can't believe. And I don't want to say all that happened, but the biggest thing that happened was a mindset shift. And I
Mhm.
didn't even know what mindset was. I didn't know what the power of it was. I, it, I still find it amazing. And I think my bigger message is that regardless of how much you are dealing with, and as you and I discussed before we hit record, one, we don't know what everybody is dealing with, but
Yeah,
we're
that's
all
right.
dealing with something, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are
Yeah.
all dealing with something. And I did it for my whole life practically. I talked myself into my story of how much more, what else can I do? I'll just wait, right? I'll wait until my son is older. I'll wait until my father, like whatever your thing is, I'll wait until I have more money, right?
Yes.
That's another big area for me. For me also, I'll wait until I'm thinner. I'll wait, right? We
Yep.
all have whatever our own excuses are. We all have them. And we're the ones limiting ourselves.
So
We
true.
really, really are. And that, I think, is my bigger message, is that stop it. Stop telling yourself these stories because they're not true. They're not true. And, my whole life I said, I'm not creative. I don't do crafts. I don't write. I can't paint. I get like, I can't tell you how many times I said that. I mean, I continue to say it. And I was just telling someone this an hour ago. I wrote, and all of a sudden, as that happened, it was like a Pandora's box opened.
Oh, wow.
Ideas. Now, I still don't paint well.
Yes.
It's not all of a sudden I have these artistic talents. That's not really where it's going. But here's someone who said, not a creative bone in my body. And all these ideas are jumping out of my head that, like, I'll have to write them down. They're coming to me sometimes so fast and furious.
Wow, that's
And
fabulous. That is so cool. I love hearing this.
because it was like that I was limiting myself. I
Yeah.
was limiting myself by telling everyone. And that was such a big thing for me. Oh, I don't do that. I
Yeah.
don't do crafts. I don't do this. I'm not this. I mean, it's just,
But we do it, don't we? As women, we do that. I don't play sports or, I don't do crafts like you said, or I don't write, or I don't, whatever it is. I don't eat any food that's not from this, whatever. And we do. We just put all these provisos and limits on experiences that could be just so much fun. And you kind of touched on one too, like when you said, oh, I'm not that great a painter. And that's the other thing that we get hooked on, isn't it, as women too? Well, if I'm not going to be good at it, I'm not going to try it. I'm not going to do it. Whereas if we take off that it has to be good enough, then we get to have these amazing experiences. And it's like your life has just flowered, hasn't it, since you had that revelation.
incredible. And you know what? The artist thing, I was at a spa, and it was a spa that offers a lot of different things, and they have a ton of art classes.
Oh, wow.
And I was with my cousin, and so, she's not the artist either. And she had left early, and I said, I'm going to stay and I'm going to go to this. It was like some kind of particular painting class.
Mhm.
I got to tell you, I was scared out of my mind. Why? I'm like having this conversation with myself. And what was it? People are good. It was the same as my writing.
Yeah.
People are going to look. You're going to judge me. They're going to look at my painting. I walked in the class and I was still so nervous because I haven't painted anything since I was probably in elementary school. And I couldn't remember. What do? You dip the brush in the water. Like, all these people knew how to paint. And I just thought, what do we think? They're all staring at me. The person next to me is probably looking over thinking, oh my goodness, I can't believe this woman is in here. And when I started chatting with the woman next to me, she introduced me to her sister next to her. And, whenever I look over and ask her a question, she would tell me exactly what to do. And when I let all of those expectations go, I saw, wow, this is how it's therapeutic. This is
Yeah.
where these adult coloring books came from. When I allowed myself to relax into it and not worry about the outcome,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
realized,
That's great.
what are people doing with, like, I could take this and throw it in the garbage when I walk out the door.
Yeah.
Who cares? Who cares? I so enjoyed it. And I did find it very relaxing and very therapeutic.
Oh, how wonderful. And have you been
It just
back?
went-
Have you been back? Have you painted again?
Also, no, I haven't gone back to the spa. So we just, in that particular place, it's the only place I know that has it.
Yeah.
So we're going back. We just actually booked it for March. So
Oh, well
I-
done. Well
I
done,
will-
you. That is so cool. So I love the title of this next book that you've got coming out, The Sprinkle Effect, A Guide to Living More Colourful and Fulfilling Life. So obviously that's got lessons that you've learned from your own life, from your own experiences. So what are some of the highlights out of the sprinkle effect that you would share to the average woman who's listening in now, may not be caregiving to the extent that you were caregiving, but they may be feeling burdened and unfulfilled with the obligations, that others have on their lives. What are some of the gems that you would have from your sprinkle effect for them?
So the sprinkle effect comes from the fact that, one, I love rainbow sprinkles. It makes it colorful. It makes it fun. And the other thing is, it's a sprinkle of something. It's not so overwhelming because I think so many times we think, oh, change my life. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That sounds ridiculous. And then what do? We say, I'm not doing anything because it can't happen. And so
Yeah.
just sprinkle in some small different things. There's about 10 what I call sprinkles in the book. And there are things like sprinkle of mindset, sprinkle of belief, of action, curiosity, joy, those types of sprinkles. And I've already touched on, I think, what I don't want to say the biggest, it's so or most important because gosh, they're all important and different.
Yeah.
Me, it's responsibility. It's really not giving your power away to everything and everyone else. I for so long was blaming the circumstances, what was happening to me, felt that I had no control or responsibility in the outcome of my life. And what was kind of a realization to me was actually this formula because I'm a numbers girl, and so I love formulas. And it's from Jack Canfield's book, The Success Principles, which is E plus R equals O, which stands for the event plus your response equals the outcome.
That's
And
the dizzle.
I was only viewing it as E equals O, meaning something happens, the event, whatever that might be. Let's just take my husband being diagnosed with cancer. Then the outcome is 4, right? And not seeing that there's that R. That's how we respond to whatever it is that can influence the outcome. So if you don't like the outcome, then you can change your response. So obviously, I can't change the outcome of my husband's diagnosis and the fact that he passed away, but I can change how I respond to it. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that every day, oh, yay, I'm so happy. That's not it. But it's taking responsibility. Look, some days, especially right after he died, right? I just want to crawl up in a hole. And there are still days, just the other day, that I feel that way. But
Yeah.
it's really my responsibility where I go from there. Do I want to stay there? Is this how I want to live the rest of my life? You know, um, it's my responsibility. Nobody asks to be a widow or asks to have any issue, any trouble that comes up in our lives. But
Yeah.
it really is how we deal with it. And when you look backwards, it's easy to say, oh, you mean that was my fault or this is my fault? But instead, to me, when I learned this and realized this, it's empowering because then you can say, oh, that means regardless of what comes my way, I have the power to decide what the rest of my life is going to look like. And that is empowering.
That is huge. That is huge. Because obviously things like grief are just have the capacity to be so overwhelming and so paralyzing. So to still realize in the midst of that, that you can still make choices, and that's massive. That's really massive because I think some people feel so overwhelmed by it that they don't realize that there is still that element of choice that they can and they will eventually get through. Sounds wrong, doesn't it? Because obviously grief impacts you for life, but are able
Changes.
to. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think any of us who've lost a loved one know it changes. It
Yeah.
just changes and it morphs and it shows itself in different ways at different times. And I guess becomes less intense over
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
you know. But and like I said, I don't want to downplay it. It doesn't mean that my husband passed away and a week later I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a positive person. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that. I'm just saying that this is what life has dealt, and now it's up to me what to do with it. We have to do something.
Yeah.
We have a part in it. But, and this, I really don't like saying this because it sounds so cliche that it doesn't sound believable, but I have learned that it's true. The journey that I've been on, that is really what it's all about,
Yes.
not the
Yes.
destination. I mean, because will there ever be a destination? I don't think so, because if we're living, then we're always evolving. We're
Yes.
always, there's something else, there's something else, there's something else. And it's what you learn, who you meet, everything along the way. And like I said, it sounds so cliche. Oh, it's all about the journey. But I've really discovered in the last decade, it's true. It's just like most cliches. They come from somewhere and they're grounded in truth.
Absolutely on the same page with you here. And what you're saying about the journey being the thing that matters. I mean, I was thinking exactly that when you're talking about the art class, because at the end of the day, it wasn't about the painting you created, was it? It was about your growth in participating and opening up and not having such preconceived ideas about those people around you that you didn't open up to them and learn and connect, and you made choices to do that. So yeah, very, very cool. So what would be like one last real gem, real word of wisdom that you would want our listeners to really take away from this interview?
Well, I feel like my last gem is kind of repeating the same thing, but it is, and as we're recording this, I don't know in New Zealand if it's getting as much hype as it is here in America, but it is a quote from a movie that I've heard a million times. And then one day I heard it and all of a sudden it meant something different. And it's from Glinda the Good Witch, who said, "You've always had the power, my dear.
Yes.
You've just had to learn it for yourself."
Yes.
And I always interpreted that as, Dorothy, you just had to click your heels 3 times and say, "There's no place like home." That was the power. But really, the message is you, me, all of us have the power. We just didn't know it. I just didn't know it. And
Yeah.
maybe you don't know it. And once you learn it, then everything changes.
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Well, Debbie, thank you so much. And I really appreciate, your vulnerability and sharing your story. And, it's such a story that I know a lot of women will resonate with, because so many women at midlife do become caregivers. And yet you started at such a young age. And I was going to ask you the question and you mentioned it. So you even went to college while in those years of being a caregiver to your father. I mean, it's phenomenal what you have actually really achieved. And we just want to honor you for that. And thank you so much for being with us and for your encouraging words today, because I know that they're really going to be a blessing to some of the people listening in today. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, everybody, there you have it. What an amazing, amazing lady. And I encourage you, we'll be popping all of Debbie's links under in the notes. Please make sure, go over to her site, check out her resources, watch that interview with Kelly Clarkson, which she absolutely nailed. You would have thought that she'd been speaking for years. And make sure that you just get in her world and let this lady just inspire you to take responsibility, to go out and live your beautiful life with all of the sprinkles that may come into it. I will see you on the next episode of the Rocking Midlife Podcast.